Hey everybody, welcome to the garage. Today we're going to work on a 2002 Toyota Camry. I'm kind of in the middle of the job, but I figured why not? We'll start right there and see how it works out. Anyway, let's get going on it. Alright guys, as you can see I'm about halfway through this job. I had to put a new wheel bearing in the car, and being that it's got 225,000 miles on it, maybe closer to 250, I figured it was a good time to do this CV shaft as well. The old one was looking a little tired. Anyway, I wanted to cover one thing with you before I go about the reinstallation here. And it's something that you'll see on many model cars when you have one car platform. If you have different engine configurations. In this case, the 02 Camry came with a V6 3-liter, I believe, or it came with the engine in this car, a 2.4-liter inline 4-cylinder. The shafts are identical with one exception. This is the original hub that I got from the parts store. And what you'll find is that it's a little too big. And it turns out this hub is actually made for the 3-liter Camry. Unfortunately, I didn't find that out until I had already pressed the bushing. The bearing, and I had installed the hub and pressed it into it. So I had to take that back apart, go back to the store, get the right parts. Turns out they had a wrong part listing. So I guess the lesson there is I should have taken the old parts with me to make sure that was all good before I got started. Anyway, all that's been taken care of. I now have the new hub and bearing assembly pressed into the steering knuckle. And I'm going to post a separate video on that procedure for you. But what has to happen for the removal, you want to take out the snap ring that you have that's in place behind the bearing. That can be very difficult. In this case, I had to cut it in several places with a Dremel tool and then use a chisel. Normally they're not that bad, but a lot of times when they're high mileage and they haven't been replaced previously, you're going to find you have that problem. Once that's done, you would go to your press, which I did at the campus, and you would first get a press piece that would line up in diameter with that hub assembly, and then you would press that out. Once that's done, you would flip the assembly over and press the wheel bearing down and out of there. Give you an idea what that looks like with this wrong part. So you know it came in handy for something at least. You'd want to find something in the proper diameter so that you can press on this housing of the bearing. But it's got to have a little bit of wiggle room so that, of course, it doesn't get stuck into the bore of the steering knuckle. Once that's pressed out, you just reverse the procedure, press in your new bearing, install your snap ring, and then you would, once that's in place, reverse it on the press and then press the hub into the bearing assembly. Anyway, all that's behind me now. So I'm at the point where I installed the CV shaft. The removal procedure is pretty cut and dry. You would take a pry bar, you want to get in behind that inner tulip cup and just pop it out. This one's already in place, so I'm not going to remove it and then reinstall it, but I do want to make sure that it's in place properly. And a common way to do that is to use a block of wood. You want to get that shaft in there. See how it telescopes in and out on the plunge joint, and make sure that you're all the way in, and then give it a good shot with a piece of wood in between there, and that'll make sure that it's bottomed out into that bore. Okay, so you're doing that procedure. you really want to get into that output coupling of the transmission. Make sure that you're in good alignment, the straighter the better. A lot of times guys will do the extra work, take the strut out of there. That way they got a nice clean shot out of it. On this one, that would require that I take this end leak apart, and a lot of times from experience I know they can be difficult to remove without damaging, so I chose to leave this one in place. So now that I have the shaft in place, I can begin to reinstall the steering knuckle. Now on the Camrys, you have an option where you could remove the cotter pin and unbolt the lower ball joint, or you could remove the 3 retaining bolts. And being that this ball joint was replaced recently, I didn't want to ruin it, so going to reuse it, I decided to go with the bolts that hold the bracket or the actual ball joint to the lower control arm. So we're going to need to pry that down slightly, get ourselves some room here, and get that assembly up in place. Let me try to do that as gracefully as I can. And you can see this one, the knuckle fits as it should. You want to be careful not to damage either the wheel speed sensor or the brake hose assembly here. So kind of holding everything together as we go. See if I can get clear of this caliper. There we go. And you do want to be mindful not to cause any damage to this boot assembly on the struts. Another reason guys might choose to take that out. Now let's see, I got the bolts laid out. So that's going to be 1 bolt and 2 nuts, should be these here. And if I recall, it's the shorter of these bolts here. So I still want to have a little wiggle to work with, so I'm not going to tighten these up yet, but I just want to get it in place. So I got that bolt started. And I got one of the nuts going on here. Could use a little Loctite on there if you wish. I've never really had a problem with these coming loose as long as they're torqued correctly. And now for the part that can be a little tricky, I gotta get this back into the lower strut here. That's gonna take a little bit of work here to get that lined up properly. Get the bolts ready so they're ready to go in once we get it aligned. These are going to be the large bolts for that lower strut. Oh yeah, today's episode brought to you by Purell. Plenty of people needing that today, right? I hope you're all well and avoiding this current virus that we have out there, making things so miserable for us. Alright, so let's see if I can get into position here. I want to get that lined up as best I can. And then we're going to have to pry down on that lower control arm. Kind of pushing in at the same time. take a little pause right there. I'll get that part done and I'll get back on.